I'm going to talk about what it means to not just to come home to a place, but to come home to yourself. So I was born in the southwest of Ireland, not too far from here, in a little town called Killorglin. Life was pretty normal growing up. I have three brothers and I had lots of little friends to play with and my cousins, and we would spend a lot of time outdoors. There was no screens at the time, and life was pretty simple. Growing up in rural Ireland, we played outdoors. We went on little adventures. And when I was about 12 years old, I joined Scouts. Joining Scouts was a major breakthrough for me in my young adolescence, as I learned how to become comfortable with taking risks in the outdoors. Killorglin is also very famous for a festival where they honour a goat for 3 days and 3 nights of the year. And this is me as the queen of the festival at the tender age of 12, but that's a story for another day. At the age of 15, I discovered rowing, or rather, rowing discovered me. I quickly discovered that I was pretty good at it, and at the time in my town, there wasn't even a boathouse to store our boat, so I used to wade my boat into the water every day and train, no matter the conditions, by myself on the river. I loved rowing, and I was a pretty determined teenager, and I quickly started to win races. My father would take me to regattas every weekend, and as I got older, I started to win more and more. At the age of 17, I won my first national junior championship. And during the summers, I would represent Ireland on the junior national team abroad, going to France, Belgium, Germany, all over Europe, competing on the junior team. When I was about 17, I got approached by a number of universities in the States to want to know if I would accept a scholarship to study there. So I made my mind up and I went to Boston University. When I was 18, I packed my bags and I took my flight to Boston and I landed on the shores of America. Not the first Irish immigrant to do so. When I landed, I was completely discombobulated. I didn't know who I was, where I was, or what I was doing there, apart from that I had come to Boston to row. As time went on, I settled in. I made friends within the rowing team and I made friends outside of the rowing team. The friends for rowing were for rowing, and the friends outside of the rowing team were for partying with. The only problem was there were no parties. Life took its toll on me at Boston, but after a while I started to settle in and I discovered how to go with the system. At the time, I didn't even know how to use the phones. I couldn't type a Word document on a computer, so I used to pay my roommate to do that for me. And as I settled in, I started to perform again at rowing and achieve the successes that I had been brought to America to do so. In the summertime then I would return to Ireland and I would represent Ireland at the under 23 level. Life was super intense in Boston. I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get to the boathouse for 5:15. When I got to the boathouse, we would get on the water and we would train for about 2.5 hours. Then I would go for breakfast, go to lectures, go to the gym and do strength training, go for dinner and study in the evening. And it was like this every single day of the week and on the weekends as well. But that brought me to great success in the summer when I was representing Ireland. And in my third year of university at the under 23 national or world championships, I came fourth in the world. During the summertime, I would race at home and I would win national championships, 5 in total. And then this is a picture of me competing at the under 23 world championships where I came fourth. That year was an amazing year for me. I was elected All-American athlete. I got a world championship record on the rowing machine in the indoor world championships. I got a leadership award and I was also voted the MVP of the university team. And then in 2001, it was time to graduate. Here's a picture of me at the commencement ceremony. And then it was, what's next? Of course, it was pretty obvious that if I was competing and winning at the international level as an under 23 athlete, the next big thing that I should do is go to the Olympics, except it wasn't that straightforward. As a rower, I did what I was told to do. I trained really hard, I got results, and that was the formula. So when I graduated, I expected that was going to work again. So the national team asked me and another Irish girl if we would move to Scotland to train with another really successful Irish rower at the time to try and compete in the Olympics in the only category that was available for lightweight women, which was the double scull. So off I went to Scotland after graduating in university in the States, and I didn't know what I was doing in Scotland. I had no friends, I had no job, and the only thing I knew how to do there was to row. When rowing was going really well, I was really happy, but when rowing wasn't going well, I was really unhappy. So after a few months in Scotland, we were told then to move back to Ireland, and back to Ireland I went, except things got worse. When I moved back to Ireland, we were accommodated in a damp house outside of the National Rowing Centre in Cork. I didn't have a car, so I had to be driven to the regatta course to train. And this lifestyle just didn't suit me. I wanted my independence, I wanted friends, I wanted a purpose outside of rowing as well. And that led me to be super unhappy. So I decided to stop rowing and to go traveling for a while to give myself a break. It was the first time in 10 years that I had let my hair down, and let my hair down I did. 3 months after being on the road, traveling around South America, I decided to come back to Ireland. And when I came back to Ireland, suddenly I was really good at rowing again. I put my head down, and in the space of a few months, I was invited back onto the national rowing team. But I was feeling a lot better about myself. The system had changed, there was a new coach, and we were spending time in Seville on training camps, not in damp, wet Cork. So it was a matter of training in Seville, back home for a few months, and then back to Seville again. And I loved this lifestyle. This is a picture of me with the team at the time, getting ready to race in Munich World Cup. And so we started getting results. The double was going really well. And then disaster struck. That summer we had done a really successful role at the World Cup regattas. And then right before the Olympic qualification regatta, myself and my doubles partner both sustained wrist injuries. This was us in that regatta at the World Championships, which was the Olympic qualifier. Unfortunately, we didn't perform as well as we should have or we could have due to our injuries. And after this, I decided I'd had enough. People sometimes ask me, was I devastated or really disappointed when I stopped rowing? And the answer is no. I was just really, really happy to stop at that time. I was really unhappy, yes, but I knew that this just wasn't working for me, and I didn't want to go another 4 years to try and qualify for the next Olympics. The other issue was, though, I didn't really know who myself when I wasn't a rower. I wasn't Fiola Foley the rower anymore. I was just Fiola Foley, but I had never really done any searching to find out who was Fiola Foley when she wasn't a rower. So I decided I was going to go looking for her. And looking for her I did in Peru. So when I went to Peru, I didn't find myself, but I found a whole bunch of trouble. Yes, I had lovely friends and I had a great job. I was teaching at the time, but life went sideways pretty quickly in Peru. Instead of finding myself, I found risk, volatility. I was assaulted with 2 guns put to my head in a car, leaving the residence of my partner's parents' place in outside of Lima. I was in a pretty serious car crash. I survived a 7.8 Richter scale earthquake. And I was also assaulted by a policeman once who got into my car and I couldn't get him out of my car. As you can imagine, life in Peru was absolutely uncertain. I didn't know from one day to the next if there was going to be an earthquake, if there was going to be an assault, if there was going to be some sort of a car crash. I was looking over my shoulder the whole time. But at the time, it was a distraction for me. Instead of looking into myself, I was distracted with just life. And this is a picture of me in Peru. After my time in Peru, I decided to return to Ireland. I'd had enough of life in Peru. I didn't know if I would stay there, if I was actually going to survive and come out alive. So I returned to Ireland and I went towards a different type of adventure. And that was the adventure of the outdoors. I threw myself into endurance sports in the outdoors when I returned to Ireland. This is a picture of me winning the race up the highest mountain in Ireland, Carrauntoohil. I was fully immersed. I'd found a new community and I discovered adventure racing. For those of you who don't know what adventure racing is, they are extremely long endurance events where you traverse 500 to 700 kilometers on foot, by bike, or by kayak. You race in a team of 4, 3 men, 1 woman. I was the woman, obviously. And you don't sleep. Well, you sleep, but if you sleep, you lose time. So you try not to sleep, and all sorts of crazy things happen. This is a picture of us in Abu Dhabi, in the Abu Dhabi Adventure Race. At that moment, we were just after coming through a pretty severe sandstorm. We had sand in our eyes, up our noses, in our mouths, everywhere. But that took up my life. I had a purpose again. I didn't have to think about anything other than training. What was the next race? Who was I going to race with? How are we going to get there? All the equipment. It was all encompassing, and it was exactly what I wanted. It was what I knew how to do. I came from a background of rowing, full in, 100%, and now I was an adventure racer. I traveled to Abu Dhabi, to Ecuador, to Spain, to France doing these adventure races, and eventually I decided that I was going to live in Switzerland, otherwise known as Swissneyland, which is like a Disneyland for the outdoors. Life in Switzerland was perfect for me. I could pursue a career while pursuing adventure in the outdoors at the weekends. The Alps became my playground. It was a great distraction. Every weekend I was either ski touring, or I was running, or I was cycling, mountain biking, or doing other things like kayaking in the lakes. And then my career also took off. I'd always wanted to work in the sports industry, and I'd found my dream job working for BMC Switzerland. I was rising within the company, and I got promoted to head of global communications. So I would spend the weeks really in a fantastic position in my career, working with professional cyclists and their teams. And then on the weekends, I would do all the crazy adventures in the Alps. I had the dream job, the dream life in a dream location. Then in 2017, tragedy struck. My cousin Kieran committed suicide. It was one of the worst things that could have happened to our family. Kieran, for me, was like a brother. And at the time, my formula of distracting myself and throwing myself into big adventures no longer worked. Nothing worked to distract myself from the grief. No cycling, no ski touring, no swimming, no 100-kilometer runs or ultra-distance runs. It was just grief. So I decided that I was going to move back to Ireland. I felt a calling to return home. Coming home to Ireland was a catalyst for healing on many different levels. I finally didn't have a distraction. I didn't have the big Alps anymore. I wasn't interested in doing long distance racing. That wasn't filling me and healing me. When I came home, I went back into the sea. I spent time by myself. I went to the beach, and nature became a healer. I found solitude in the silence, solitude in having no people around, and the slowing down. There was less of a fast pace, and it gave me the space and the time to be with myself and to just look into myself. Then in 2020, I became a mom. And motherhood has been the ultimate accountability for self-healing. Because if you're not healed, or if you're not healing yourself as a person, when you have a little other person to look after, you'll pass on your wounds to them. So I spent even more time trying to make sure that I wasn't going to be passing on my wounds to this little person. So it became even more important that I was healing from any of the wounds that I had gathered from my rowing history, or my history in Peru, or unresolved things that I needed to look at. Then I also discovered a different way to adventure. I was no longer pursuing adventure just for me, but pursuing adventure to pass that on to her, to show her how fun it is to go on adventures. They don't have to be big, high mountains or super long distances, but it's more about just the experience of pushing your limits and being in the outdoors. We go in the sea. That's us stand on a stand-up paddleboard close to here. And it's just the small things that have all been part of this big puzzle that has started to fit together when it comes to self-healing. I've also healed my rowing history through community. That was the only way that this could be healed. It wasn't through racing again. It wasn't going to be really through stepping away the whole time, because it was still a sport that I found out that I really love. I'm now part of an amazing rowing community in Ireland within the Masters women's rowing scene. So we're all a bunch of women that have come from different areas and backgrounds of life with our own stories, and we just love getting into a boat together and rowing. Yes, we race, because that's kind of what rowing is, but the stakes aren't high anymore. The racing is for fun, not for results, although sometimes maybe it's a little bit about results as well. And I also healed a big through recognition. So when I stopped rowing in 2004, I had put everything into a box and closed the lid and pushed it to the side. And I never went back to Boston again. In 2025, I was invited back to Boston to be inaugurated into the Boston University Hall of Fame. And that's me with some of my American family and my brother in Boston receiving this amazing recognition, which for me closed the circle. Finally, I could look back at my rowing and think, actually, there were parts of it that were amazing. Yes, it was pretty difficult towards the end, but it was a way for me to look at the rowing from a different lens, and that lens was, oh, look at everything that it gave me in my life. So if I could leave you with some takeaways, the first one would be to be brave, shoot for the stars, and take calculated risks, to run towards yourself and not away from yourself in difficult times. We all have the answers within us. I ran to the extreme. Every time life got difficult, I would throw myself into the next adventure, look for the next distraction. Yes, it resulted in some amazing stories and successes, but it might have been an easier journey along the way if I had just stopped for a second and looked inward rather than always looking for the next big adventure and the next distraction. And then finally, most important of all, is to know when to stop, to rest, and to smell the flowers. Thank you.